we go. Let's just, oops, just a little bit. Hello guys. Thank you for joining us again for another week of Fashion Bites Chat. I am Hillary, the founder of the Fashion Bites platform. We're here to support and nurture creative entrepreneurs, filling in the gap between what happens in real life and education. This is our way to connect, collaborate, and share. We have a great night planned for you this evening with the lovely Alison Lowe MBE, sharing all her wonderful knowledge with us. And she is online. Let's get her on now. So this will be great. We're just waiting for her to come on.
Hello.
There we go. Hello, how are you?
I'm fine. I've done the first challenge and I've managed to get here and find my way in.
That's great. That's the first step. But don't worry, it'll go quick and easy. It's fine. It's fine.
No, this is lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we dive in, please tell us a bit about you.
Wow, where do I start? A long career in lots of different areas of business. I'm a serial entrepreneur myself. I've owned 7 different businesses, sold 4, still own 3. And I came into fashion about 18 years ago now when I spotted a gap in the market because I felt that there wasn't enough support for emerging fashion brands, that they weren't being given very honest, realistic business advice. Lots of people go, oh yeah, you're great, amazing, spend money with us. PR agencies, fashion weeks, everybody wanted their money, but nobody seemed to be giving them much help. So set up Felicity's agency 17 years ago as an identified need. And that is a full agency in the fact that we do everything with fashion brands, from helping them look at design, manufacturing, retailing, selling, a whole sort of hand-holding process. And we work with brands from all over the world. And I can say we did a count, we've done just over 2,000 brands that we have supported since we have set up. Alongside that, because we get so much demand for help, I also set up startyourownfashionlabel.com, which is just an online platform of resources that we get asked for a lot. So like, how do I write a business plan? What should an email to a buyer look like? So some very basic resources. Not as many as I hope. We're still trying to push some more in there, but you know, time is always tight. So I got distracted a little bit writing the book last year. So the book on how to start your own fashion label launched last year, in this time last year, November, and
Yes.
became an Amazon #1 bestseller, which I was really thrilled about in the fashion category. So that took a lot of time. And then now I'm going back to filling up the resources. So lots of mentoring, lots of business advice, lots of support for predominantly startups, though some of them have sort of stayed with me. So I still do consultancy with brands that I started with 18 years ago.
Oh, that is amazing. Very, very, very amazing. Now, what are some of the common mistakes you find that startups make?
Okay, big mistakes. I think the first one is not doing enough research. They often get really carried away with their ideas of what they want to do, and they're very passionate about it, but they haven't done enough research to check that there isn't other people out there already doing it, or maybe doing it bigger and better than they are. I'm sorry if you can hear that. That's my doorbell going off. Every time I go online today, my doorbell goes off. So that's the first mistake, not doing enough research. Going into overproduction straight away, trying to create too big a collection, putting it into production, thinking if they just open a website, it will sell. And I often, unfortunately, get to them too late, that they've already lost all their money. And it's often too late to rescue them. So a lot of my work now is trying to get to them before they do that. So I think they're the two biggest ones. Rushing it, presuming getting too far ahead, and not doing enough research.
Right. Okay. With the leading on from the production, how do you manage overproduction? What would you advise them not to do?
Okay, so I think the market has changed a lot, and I think the way that I advise brands to start off with now is really go slow, organic growth, test the market. You're better off making 6 products and making 6 really good, really beautiful products, taking it to the market, getting customers, showing it to friends and family, selling, making maybe 5 of each piece, sell them, put the money back in the business, and make the next pieces. So you really build it slowly and organically, which a lot of people find that surprising. But actually, that's how all the really big brands started. Whether we look back to Chanel and Dior, they started making 1 piece and inviting a friend in to have a look at it. If we go to the 60s and we look at people like Vivienne Westwood, Paul Smith, Mary Kwan, they didn't go and make 24 look collections and pay to be on a catwalk show. They did it really slowly, really organically. And that's what I recommend, because those are the brands that are still around. And they have lasted because they have a really good core infrastructure in their business. So again, there's not rushing ahead. So if you don't rush ahead, if you've got overproduction, you might have overproduction of just 5 pieces, which is much better than a 24 look collection and you've got 100 of every one.
Absolutely. So how would you decide as a business to go retail or wholesale?
I think these days for a startup, they have no choice but just to go direct to consumer, because even if they want to go wholesale, the wholesale buyers are only going to take a risk on a new brand that has a proven customer base. In other words, there's no risk. The wholesaler does not want to take any risk now. So I do quite a lot of work with buyers, and they always say the same. The first thing they'll do is go on the Instagram account for the brand. They'll look at their website. They'll see what a buzz there is about the brand. And if they're starting to make sales and they've got a buzz, then they'll be interested in seeing them. But if they've got no proven customer base, it's too big a risk for the wholesale. So I think direct to consumer, first of all, with the hope that later on you can pick up wholesale and it's under your terms as well, because wholesale can be quite scary at the moment. The terms are awful.
Right. And in the current climate, what things should a business look at for the future with regard to their business model?
I think everything is now. Sorry, go on.
No, just how can they adjust and plan for the future?
I think everything now is about the consumer. So really, really understanding your consumer. I think the fashion industry of the past, where people didn't even look at the consumer, they just made what they loved and believed that people would come to them and find it and buy it because they loved it. Unfortunately, those days have gone. Today's consumer is much more educated. They have access to more information and knowledge. So they do a lot more searching. So your first part of your business model is being totally consumer focused and really keeping up to date with changing consumer. You know, we've just been through the year from hell and still not out of it yet. And not only have the brands changed during that time, but the consumer has. There's been a lot of changing behavior. And I talk a lot about the 3 new things that consumers look for. And that is protection, connection, and engagement. And if you can build your brand on those things, those 3 things, you've got a good business model. So protection is protection of the planet. So that could be the organic, the sustainable element. Protection of your staff and the people you work with. So that's around the ethics of your business and fair working practices. And protection of the consumer. So, you know, looking after them, providing them with things that actually fulfill their needs and answer their problems. So that's protection. Connection is the consumer now doesn't want to be just sold product. They want to feel that they're part of something, that they're part of a community. And so building the sense of community is really important. And I think the hardest challenge I have at the moment is getting brands to stop selling. Because they know in past, they panic, and they try to sell really hard. And that's the last thing the customer wants. So what you have to do is turn it around and try and connect and build a connection with the consumer and build your brand story. And if you create a really good experience for the customer, then they will buy the product afterwards. So a complete turnaround to perhaps how they've done it before. And I can understand when they are desperate and they need those sales, your tendency is I'll start discounting, I'll start sending 3 e-newsletters a day, you know, I'll be all over social media, and it actually just scares the customer off. So it's about looking at bringing them in rather than pushing information out to them. And the last one is engagement, which was definitely from the pandemic, the rise of TikTok. And it's a connected to the connection element. In the consumer wants to engage, they want to have conversation, they want to do something. They want to feel part of the process, again, not just buy a product. So some brands are doing amazing things, whether it is a TikTok and a Reels challenge, or the brands that are now giving things away to consumers, which is a sales technique that is used in other industries. You know, you give something for free, they come in for and will buy something. So whether that's Chris Rayburn giving away one of his patterns so you can make your own, he just released a new one this week. Oh, polar bear. You can make your own Christopher Rayburn polar bear. You can download the pattern and make your own, and he teaches you how to do it. People like Emma J. Shipley, who you could download one of her prints and colour it in and upload it. And that gets people involved in your brand. They see the detail, they see the work and the artisan skills that go into it. They'll value it more and they'll buy more. Right. So 3 things: protection, connection, engagement. That's how you build your brand.
That's amazing. And I mean, I think we understand that the customer experience is extremely important, even if you do have, you know, a mail order business and you have to send it, and the packaging and that whole experience is quite important.
Yeah, for online, I mean, it's where so many brands have got into trouble with online, because you lose that experience. The customer gets the experience when they go online, your social media, your website, they get very excited, it looks beautiful, they hit the button, they buy it, and it arrives a few days later, or maybe several days later if you're really slow in your delivery processes, and it arrives in an average plastic bag. Where's the experience? So it's really putting that experience back into the packaging is so important, because otherwise you get a huge return rate. And as soon as you put the experience back in the packaging, your return rates drop.
Yeah, definitely. And we know that the digital vision, I can't speak. Virtual is a big is a big part of our communication strategy going forward. Now, for new brands and even some established brands, what are some ways to gain that trust, especially if you're a brand, you're established already in your own right, but then you need to develop the online presence? How do you, work on that trust for your customers?
I think just being really authentic. I think the thing about particularly digital and social media, it's about real, and it's about having real conversations, and it's showing the reality of it. And I think for quite a lot of brands, they first of all went over and they tried to make it all a bit too glossy and a bit too perfect. But that's not what that's about. The social media is about actually building that relationship. It's about having the conversation. It's about the reality. So with a lot of brands, I know not all brands like doing it, but I say, you have to get in front of that camera in some ways, and you have to talk and you have to communicate. Or if you can't do it on camera, you've got to find your own way of telling your story about what you do. So I have a lovely brand that I work with in Canada, and she's absolutely terrified of being on camera. She hates it. I don't know why. She's absolutely stunningly beautiful, but she doesn't like going on camera. But she's worked out, she films over the back of her shoulder while she's actually doing the stitching, and she talks, so you can hear her voice, you can see what she's doing. But it also really showed people the detail, because I think particularly for startup brands, when your product is expensive, customers don't understand how long things take. You know, I hear people say all the time, you say, well, you know, that will take, I don't know, like a couple of hours to make. And you're like, no, that's like a couple of weeks of hand sewing. I mean, this particular designer, she does hand bead work. It takes hours. And then the customer also understands what's gone into it. So I think digital is about the reality. It's coming out, it's empathizing with the consumer about what they're going through. You know, we've seen that a lot this year with everything that's gone on with Black Lives Matter and, you know, with the lockdown, and understanding how people are scared, they're worried about their jobs, their incomes. You've just got to be really real and actually just talk. It's just about having a conversation. And I think sometimes just forget about that perfectness and just start talking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, what are some creative ways that a designer or a newcomer can get honest feedback about their collection?
Ask people. Actually, that's a sales technique that I often tell designers to do, is forget about selling, start asking people for feedback. I always have a story that I tell everybody about. I had two brothers who started a business in the 60s, and they wanted to make, you know, a brand on Carnaby Street that was going to be really cool. And their father was a very old traditional Jewish tailor, and he was having no nonsense with any of this new modern stuff. So the boys had to do it themselves. And they only had enough money to buy fabric to make 3 dresses. So they made the 3 dresses, and then the one brother walked up and down Carnaby Street until he found a lady that he thought was his customer, and he asked her to come back and give him feedback on the dress. She loved it. She bought one. He went out. At the end of the day, they had asked several people. They bought all of them. They took their money back to Berwick Street Market, bought enough fabric now to make 6 dresses, and they always built their business on givers' feedback. They now make something ridiculous, like 30,000 evening wear dresses a month.
My
But
goodness.
started with 3, and they started with the givers' feedback. Consumers, again, it's that engagement. If they feel like they're part of the process, they'll own it more. They'll tell their friends, oh, I helped that designer. Oh, I helped choose this piece. So ask people to be honest. I think one of the things in fashion industry is there's lots of people who just give you, as I said right at the beginning, that, oh yeah, you're amazing, you're fantastic, give us your money. So just really look at, you know, asking people for honest feedback, and ask everybody you can.
Yeah, perfect. I wanted to talk about a little bit about transparency, especially in the supply chain, which I think is quite important. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've moved beyond sustainability, and it's looking at transparency. I think, unfortunately, there's been so much greenwashing. There's been so many brands that say, we're sustainable. And then when you investigate it, they've made 1 t-shirt out of organic cotton, and they think that's job done. That actually everybody's been a bit conned by it. And again, this is where the new consumer who investigates. So actually what you need is transparency. You need to be able to say how it's done or where it's done. And I've been working with a lot of brands on this, and there's different. You can do it yourself. You can use different platforms. So something like B Corporation, which really helps you go through all the different elements. But one thing we've learned in this process is if you can't do everything sustainably, if you struggle maybe a particular fabric, or you're not sure about your logistics, it's actually better to come out and say to the consumer, look, we have done all this. We've sourced. This is our factory. This is who's making our pieces. This is where our cotton is grown. But we don't know how our logistics are working. We've got a gap, but we're working on it. The consumer values that a lot more, because again, it's that authenticity, it's the honesty. So to me, yeah, because we don't know what all these words mean. What does ethical, conscious, sustainable, green fashion, fair fashion, you know, there's so many words. And I mean, I spend my life when people say them to me and I go, what does that mean? What are you actually doing? I mean, I have been to a brand that, this was a couple of years ago now, but I went to a brand who classed themselves as sustainable. And when I went in, I said, what is it that you're doing that's sustainable? And she was like, oh, well, we did buy some organic cotton, but yeah, we haven't got that in this collection. And then she looked around, and it was literally, she'd got a long life light bulb and a recycle bin in the corner. I mean, it's just, you know, I've seen it all. I've heard people say we're sustainable because, you know, we're nice to everyone. Well, what does nice mean? Like, that's not really a term that, you know, you can classify what being nice means. So to me, transparency is everything. And it is transparency on sustainable, on the product and the whole manufacturing process. It's being transparent on your ethics, your fair working practices. And it's not just having a policy on your website, because we know certain big brands who had that, but were still paying staff £3 an hour. It's being transparent in all the processes and trying to show exactly who and what is involved in your process. And the same with diversity and inclusion. There's lots of brands that, you know, moved into diversity. We saw that because of Black Lives Matter, but it was just tokenism. And it's actually about the full inclusion, and it's that transparency in the process. It wasn't the brands that just stuck up their little black tile for 1 week and then have gone back to doing what they do normally. So true inclusion as well, to me, is part of that whole transparency.
Absolutely, absolutely. And speaking of like brands and newcomers taking their time, talk to us a little bit about using influencers to tell for storytelling. Is that absolutely necessary?
Oh no, I usually go influencers.
Yeah.
They're a nightmare, most of them. So I think there is a place for an influencer if they have true influence. I think what people got carried away with, just seeing these people who had a big following, and it actually didn't mean anything. They've bought a following. They've got, you know, however many thousand likes on each post. It's all fake. So I think if you build a relationship with a genuine person of influence, and the influence is influence over your customer to make a purchase. And that's the bit that most people think, oh, they're an influencer. Well, who do they influence? And if most of their following is 13 to 18-year-olds, then they're only influencing somebody who has £20 disposable income each week, and they're not your customer. So for me, I've never understood it. When I set up Felicity's, the one thing that I said we wouldn't do, and I'm very proud that we've never done it, but in 17 years, we have never paid a celebrity or influencer to wear any of the collections from any of our brands, nor have we ever gifted. Because to my mind, if you gift and you pay those people, you devalue your business and your product. Lend it to them, let them borrow it, work with a stylist and get it back. But as soon as you start gifting it, paying these people, it's almost devaluing your brand. It works well for high street because it's a young person's field. But just having a big influencer with big numbers might not even get you a hit on your website. So influencer, only if they have influence over your customer. And so you really need to look way beyond the numbers, look at other campaigns they've done, see how successful they are. We talk much more now about micro and nano influencers, that actually you might get more value from working with somebody who's got 400 followers than you've got with somebody who's got 400,000, because those 400 are genuine people who will take notice of what they're saying.
Right. Makes perfect, completely agree, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, as I said, I seem to have spent the last 10 years going influencers.
Another one of my favorite words, and not my favorite word, is trends. How do we move away and get away from trends and following whatever that means?
Okay, so again, my other pet hatred. I love this. You're covering all my favorite subjects. I have a big issue with WGSN. I'm going to put it out there. I'm just going to be brave and say it. And I think because the problem with that is everybody's following the same trends, which means everybody's making the same product, which then means you've got, if we take the polka dot dress trend that has been over the last few years, there was at one point you could go down every single store on Oxford Street, Carnaby Street, Regent Street and Bond Street, and they all had very, very similar polka dot dresses in, because they had all been led by the same trend forecasting agency. And the only difference was, in one store you'd pay £10 and in another store you could pay 10,000, and every price in between it. But the product was more or less the same. So again, for me, the luxury and the startup market is, if you move away from the trends, you create more authentic, genuine collection. You're able to actually look at your design skills, but also design to your consumer. Because everybody else in the industry is running around about trends, the buyers, the magazines, the designers, but the consumer isn't. The consumer wants what they look good in and what they feel like. So again, if you build a direct-to-consumer business and you talk directly to consumers, you will create the product that they want. So I think we have to move beyond it. I think it's led the industry into the huge problems it's got now, because we have now, where are trends now? We've had the wrong collections at the wrong season because the stores shut, the manufacturers couldn't work. If you go into some of the high street retailers, it's hilarious, the combination of things that they have in their store, because everything's come through at the wrong time. If you have trends as well, it means you only have a short window to sell it. And if it's a trend spring summer piece, that means you've only got that tiny window, which means you also then have to discount it. And as soon as you put spring summer on it, the customer goes, I'll wait till they start to discount it. And it's really hard to sell anything at full price. And that to me is part of the issue, part of the problem of the trends process and putting dates and titles on things. It limits your selling on it. And the consumer knows now, and they're just going to wait. They're going to wait for you to discount it.
Yeah, I absolutely do myself. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a Net-a-Porter wish list that's just sitting there waiting.
Absolutely. What do you think fashion will look like when whatever normal is, whenever we get back to normal? What type of lessons do you think we should learn from the year we're still in, almost over?
To me, in many ways, and this is going to sound really awful, I'm glad it's happened in many ways, because it's brought to the front a lot of things that I've been saying to fashion brands for a long while that were broken. This trend process, the discounting, the gifting for influencers, it was all broken. So I think the first thing I say to people is, don't fall back into old habits when we come out of the side of this. It wasn't working before we went in. It's certainly not going to work now. So to my mind, it's about moving forward and finding a new way of working, and actually not everybody doing exactly the same thing. The reason I was fascinated about the fashion industry in the first place and came into it is I don't know any other industry or sector where everybody does the same things at the same time. They all follow the same trends. They all produce their collections at the same time. They show it at the same time. They put it into the stores at the same time. As an entrepreneur, that is my worst nightmare. I would make things at an opposite time to somebody else. I'd make something completely different to everybody else. I'd show it at a different time. It's not being entrepreneurial at all. And I don't know why it is. And I do still talk to lots of brands and they'll go, we'll be all right when we go back to normal. And I'm going, don't go back to normal. There is no normal. Do it differently. Be entrepreneurial. Do it the way that is right for your business, and don't just keep following everybody else. It's really shocking how brands all just want to do what everybody else is doing, and they're too scared to strike out and do something different.
Yeah, you've got to still be creative. That's what the word actually means. You know?
Be creative, be entrepreneurial, do it your way. Don't follow what everybody else is doing. Don't follow the same designs that everybody else is doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, so please chat to us about being a judge on Great British Entrepreneur Awards.
Oh, I love it. Because I'm absolutely passionate about being an entrepreneur. I fell into being an entrepreneur at 17. I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was at 17, but I decided that I didn't want to work for anybody else, so I was going to set up my own business. And And I had to learn a lot because I really was disaster, the first business I had for quite a long time. So I'm really passionate about entrepreneurial spirit, whether that's spirit as in you own your own business or entrepreneurial spirit you do somebody else's. I'm thrilled to be part of the Great British Entrepreneur Awards. Oh my God, I get to meet the most amazing people who I sit there every year and come away thinking, I'm so inadequate. Why can't I come up with one of these amazing designs or these amazing ideas or business models that these people have come up with? There's some fantastic businesses out there. And it's not always about the big ones. We do have some really big ones that have really gone on and, you know, done amazing things since they've won Great British Entrepreneur Awards. And we have some other really big brands that are part of the judges. But for me, I really like some of the smaller ones that are doing amazing things, that have been really brave in stepping out there. Last year, I met this lovely lady, and she's a farmer's wife in Devon, in the middle of nowhere. And she started her business. She drew a picture to go on her son's bedroom wall because she couldn't find what she wanted. And her friends all said, oh my God, that's amazing. Why don't you sell them? And she now has a business that sells lots of different products. She's selling in John Lewis. Really, there's some amazing stories out there. And there was once a young man who he was 18 and he had come up with this brilliant concept of a business. Didn't actually own any of the products, but he set up a platform and he said to somebody, if I create a platform and I sell your products, will you supply them? And they said, yeah. They thought, oh, he's an 18-year-old, he's never going to sell anything. And he sold £2.5 million worth of products on the day he launched his business. And he sold his business for £46 million 18 months after he launched it. And he was 18 years old, sitting in his bedroom on a computer. That is who I get to meet at Great British Entrepreneur Awards. It's fantastic. Absolutely stunning what people can do. Yeah. Yeah,
that's totally amazing. And final question, please. Any message that or advice you would give a newcomer coming into the fashion industry?
Build your network. Find people. You don't have to do it all on your own. In fact, you're probably not going to survive, or you're not going to succeed if you try to do it on your own. So build a network. Find other people around you that can help connect you, mentor you, support you, introduce you. It is your network that often really helps you succeed. So, you know, doing what you do is amazing, because that's what people need. They need that network. They need those pointers. They need to be introduced. So find your network. Don't try and do it on your own. Reach out to other people.
Amazing. And a very fitting conclusion. Thank you so, so much for spending this time with us today.
Oh, it was my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me. It was so nice to see you again, even if we are doing it like this.
I know, virtually. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Join us again next week for another inspiring chat. Remember, you can catch up on all our chats, including this one, on IGTV. Many thanks again. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.